Victoria is commonly referred to as the basket case economy of Australia. For property investors, it is the number one concern for anyone who lives there, for anyone who owns there, and for all the property investors with their eye on Melbourne right now. But what's real and what will actually impact property in the years ahead? That's exactly what I'm about to try and investigate in this video. I'm specifically going to go through the Victorian budget and see if it has any real impact on house price direction in the years ahead. I'm going to go through its employment market and see if all that job creation is going to help create more housing demand in the years ahead. We're going to go through building approval numbers. We're going to go through the supply charts as well and go through the infrastructure boom that's going on in Melbourne. Specifically, what I'm trying to work out is the basket case economy of Australia going to lag, act as a chain, and stop the Melbourne house price growth trajectory that makes a lot of sense and that we've unpacked in this video and this video and this video. All these videos all about Melbourne looking pretty good. But the big bottleneck is, will the economy hold it back? Let's go check it all out. So firstly, we have this chart here from this big article from the AFR, how Victoria became a poor state. What a brutal, brutal headline from the AFR. And there's a second headline. The strong consensus in other states is that Victoria is broke and your property price does not go up. Pretty brutal. These are brutal words from Victorians about their own state. Anyway, let's go through gross state product. Some of the charts that the AFR have here. Now, Victoria's per capita gross state product. So how much are Victorians producing every single month or every single year per person? This chart is pretty ugly. Over 2 decades, it's going backwards. A lot. Victorians are doing less and less and producing less per person. But really, does that matter at all for housing demand? I don't really think so. It's not important enough. It's just not the number one thing to look at. Gross state product and house prices, they don't correlate that strongly with each other, particularly when you go gross state product per capita. That doesn't correlate at all. It'd be like, yeah, we might be producing a little bit less, but what's the total production of Victoria? Is that increasing? That matters a lot. So this is where you go from looking at it from a per person perspective and looking at it from a total pie perspective. Is Victoria doing more? Is the economy growing? Is it producing more goods and services, exporting more, etc., etc.? The answer to most of those things is yes, in absolute terms, because Victoria is getting so much more people, and that's what matters for housing demand. And you can see it here, per capita gross state product by state. I've got Victoria here at 84,000. South Australia here is at 76,000, really, really low. But South Australian house prices have risen 75%, while Victorian house prices have not moved at all. Which proves the point that it doesn't really matter so much what is going on with gross state product. So yes, it is bad per person. So if you're a Victorian, you're like, this ain't as good as it used to be. You probably feel a little bit like that. But en masse, and in terms of the housing market, I don't think this is really a full-blown constraint in the years ahead. As long as the Victorian gross state product as a total keeps increasing, which it will, from their own budget forecasts, they do predict growth. So that will continue to happen, but you won't see it per person increasing. Okay, so the next thing to look at is their employment market. Now, this one is the one that gets heralded around, gets bashed, being like Victorians, they can't find a job, the housing market keeps falling. It's just such a negative sentiment at the moment. But when you look under the hood and you look at, are they creating jobs? Yeah, they're creating lots of jobs, 3.3% increase. The Australian national average is 2.7%. Victoria is driving Australia forward in terms of job creation. That's what matters. When it comes to housing demand, is someone getting a job? Is someone in a job? Are they feeling confident about their employment prospects? That is what matters. The number of people in a job. That is so meaningful when it comes to housing demand because it's the starting point to buying a house. I met a young couple recently. They were looking to move to Melbourne because their employer had offered them a position to go and work there. And they got a little bit of a promotion to do it. So they had a national company and they could move to Victoria, their headquarters, and get a promotion. This sort of story suggests that, hey, Victoria is creating jobs and this person went and took the job and is now going to go buy a house. That is kind of a common story that you see before house price growth actually occurs. Employment growth is what to look at. And that's in the data here. That person getting that job in Melbourne would be adding to this employment growth stat. Unemployment rates matter a little bit less. It's not the number of people unemployed that matters so much. It's the number of jobs that are being created. Those two often work hand in hand. You often have no jobs being created and the unemployment rate going up. That's pretty common. But nationally, we have unemployment rates going up because we're bringing in so many people at the moment. And it's pretty hard to create that many jobs to get them all into employment, which is all really positive for housing demand. So I am not too concerned by this, and the unemployment rate is going up in Victoria for a good reason. Media articles, man, this pisses me off a little bit. Like, I'm reading these articles from the AFR of all places. They're supposed to be, the savvy, the really smart ones, and they're just trashing. They're just trashing it in the bin. Victoria, you're in the garbage bin. You suck. You suck so bad, and it's article after article after article after article. It's the sentiment that goes through people's minds when they read these articles being like, Victoria must be the basket case, because all they see is, it is a basket case. Check out this video with, these politicians who represent Victoria. They literally represent them. They're talking about it as if it's in the toilet can. There's real life Victorians out there listening to this being like, come on, like, hello, don't talk about us in this way. Check out what this politician has to say.
The market's so flat, investors are fleeing. These are just big announcements with no substance, no money behind them, and it's just Jacinta Allen trying to look busy.
Yes, but looking under the hood, looking at it properly, not looking at all these media biases, you see the participation rate going up. People feel confident getting in jobs, and that's why the unemployment rate's going up. It's because the people that are not participating in the employment market at all, the people staying at home that are like, actually, I kind of feel like I can get a job right now. Maybe I'll go start looking. That's why the unemployment rate goes up, because that's how unemployment rates are measured. Ignore the scary word of unemployment. It's not looked at in isolation. If unemployment's coming to light because everyone feels so confident they're going to get a job, that's a good sign. If employment growth is happening at the same time, that's a very, very positive sign. And you have these things in Victoria. It's a really, really strong, healthy jobs market. And that matters so much more for housing. Okay, next, we're going to look at the budget. Okay, this one isn't pretty. Let's just be real about it. Everyone says this. The AFR has a mess of public finances. One of the darkest clouds on the Victorian economic horizon is the seeming inevitability that a future state government will have to undertake some combination of swinging expenditure cuts and tax increases to put its finances into a sustainable trajectory. Okay, so when you look at this though, you look at the Victorian state budget. You don't actually see something that's that horrible or that out of line with every other state. Yes, you have the COVID period. Victoria was in lockdown much longer than everyone else. Look, you can call it policy or not, or you can just say they got a little bit unlucky. In New South Wales, we're doing so well in 1 month, and the next thing you know, we're closed for 3 months. That's what happens. There's a little bit of luck, and that really impacted their budget. And they've got this huge budget hole in these years. But it's really caught up to the national average again in terms of how their budget is tracking. They've made some tough decisions. And yes, property investors can feel the brunt of this. They don't like it. Businesses don't like it. There has been tough decisions made, but their budget looks broadly in line with other budgets going forward. But they do have a higher interest expense from the debt that they had to take on during the COVID period. But their budget years over the next few years are broadly in line with the Australian average here. So nothing that seems that concerning other than a higher debt balance associated with those COVID years. And by the sounds of it, they don't have a large amount of assets that they can sell off to go and pay off this debt. So there is some concern around the budget. The main concern that I actually see is the forward-looking direction, where it's just like, hey, if they need to raise a little bit more money, where will the Victorian government get it from? They have form here. They will probably go and target property investors a little bit more, dial up those taxes a little bit more. Those property taxes that kicked in a year or two ago, they can increase the rates, being like, why don't we go get a little bit more from them? Squeeze! Yeah! That's kind of how governments work when it comes to this. Property investors, they're a pretty good person to squeeze at the end of the day, being like, nobody likes them. That is partly the truth, so you've got to be wary of that, and a budget in this position does do it. So that is one concern point. Let's just be real about that. If you're buying in Victoria, you have uncertainty over the future tax environment that your property investment is in. If I'm buying in Victoria, I'm modeling out whatever my land tax is and I'm just going to double it. Be like, let's double it. Of course, that might not happen. I'm just going to have to do that because it's a risk. They have form. They can just change the rate on their land taxes that they've already put in place. So they may do that in years ahead to raise more money. And it's kind of an easy target. So that is something to be somewhat concerned about. Another thing I want to go and look at is housing supply in Victoria. And yes, if I'm a property investor, this one concerns me. If I'm a Victorian and a Melbourneite, I love this. This is a government doing its job. Your government in Victoria does its job when it comes to housing supply, while pretty much the rest of the country are horrible at this. Victoria is the champion of housing supply. They actually get it done. It's in the data. Let's look at dwelling completions in FY24. You have Victoria with more dwelling completions than New South Wales, significantly higher. They completed 60,000 homes in the last 12 months, 30% higher than New South Wales. That's crazy. And it's well and truly above everyone else. Of course, Victoria has a larger population, needs to produce more homes, but it's blowing away its competition in actually delivering homes. And if you go back over 30 years, Victoria has completed per person, per 1,000 people, 50% more dwelling completions than New South Wales. That doesn't make any sense. To be like, what is going on here? Why are Victoria so good at housing supply versus New South Wales being particularly bad? And right now, if you pay any attention to Victorian planning policies, they're going out there being like, I will make that higher, that one higher, that one higher, that one higher. Let's build up. Let's go, everyone. We need to fix this housing crisis. Let's build, 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 build. That's the Victorian government's plan. And they have history in getting it done. While all the other states, they're just like, I don't really know, do this, do that. They need to go to Victoria and be like, Victoria, please help. How do I actually go and do this? This is what drives housing price growth levels down, keeps a lid on all that price appreciation, and helps make homes affordable for Victorians and for people. For property investors, that's not what you want to hear. It's the opposite of what you want to hear. Property investors be like, wait, what? What? Say that again? Going to build more homes? It's going to be near me? Yeah, Victorians going to build more homes everywhere. They're so good at this. And if that happens, you really do have a lower capital growth rate than the rest of Australia because they're going to build more homes. The general data-driven approach where it's just like, okay, Melbourne has grown less than Adelaide, so Melbourne needs to grow more to catch up to Adelaide. That sort of simplistic thinking doesn't really hold true when there's differences in how state governments operate in delivering housing supply. Housing supply makes up half of the equation to a house price. It's demand and it's supply. The supply side is very, very good in Victoria, and it's something that I look at being like, do I want to be a long-term investor in Victoria? I'm not so sure with housing supply being so strong. And the final point I wanted to go through was all this infrastructure investment that is going on in Victoria. Now again, when you read all the articles, it's all the bad things that you hear. Cost blowouts, it costs too much money, things are delayed. Yeah, that's all going to happen. But Melbourne is still a little bit of a baby city. It's turned into a bit of a toddler, and they're building up all of this infrastructure at the moment. They've got $208 billion in major infrastructure projects, and they're adding more, another $132 billion in capital projects in the budget for 2024 and 5 and beyond. They're going crazy. They're building big in Victoria. This should be viewed as a positive, I feel like. Like, why are we slamming them for giving it a real shot at building infrastructure and making Victorians' lives better? They're not building this infrastructure for no reason. They're doing it for a particular reason in trying to fit more people in and make things better, the services better for Victorians. Now, there are cost blowouts, but when I look at this, a lot of this needs to be paid for via the upzoning of land in and around the areas where all this new infrastructure will go. Here's this little picture of it. There's all these new stations and new links in and around here. We're going to go through a suburb analysis, deep dive into suburbs that you want to look at into Melbourne specifically in an upcoming video, or in a video that we've just released. We're about to produce that. That will have a lot of detail here, but they're going through a huge infrastructure program at the moment. That is not necessarily a negative. It means expenditures are going in. It means jobs are being created right now. So right now, that could be a positive in the years ahead because the employment prospects are pretty good in Victoria. So there you have it. You've got my summary of it all, being like, is the Victorian economy, is the Melbourne economy, is it really a basket case that really means that there's no price growth in the years ahead? I don't think so. In fact, I actually think that we may be overcooking the idea of it needs a government change for property prices to rise. It's because this government is doing a really good job on housing supply as one of the main reasons why property prices aren't rising. And instead of lamenting that, perhaps we should be thinking, hey, actually, it's kind of nice that, rents are a little bit more affordable here and house prices are a little bit more affordable here and house prices aren't rising 80% here. That is not necessarily a symbol of their failure, but perhaps a function of their success in delivering housing supply. Now, yes, their budget is a little bit of a concern, particularly in relation to property investors, because they could easily increase taxes to raise a little bit of money to keep funding all of this infrastructure projects and everything that they need in the years ahead. The infrastructure program is very, very large. It's the largest in Australia, so they're doing particularly well here as well. So overall, I think it is something to be aware of, but it's not nearly as bad as what everyone is suggesting. And instead, it's not the economy is in a basket case, it's a focus on housing supply that property investors should look at. And that will become a bigger story in the years ahead. If you found this video interesting, and if it's helping you frame your decision as to whether I should invest in Melbourne or not, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button below, hit the like button, and follow me on my journey to produce more content about the economies of Australia, the housing markets of Australia, and lending insights for you to build better, stronger, and safer property portfolios.